I'm Nikki Bush, human potential expert, speaker, and author. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to be talking to you about reframing disruption, because change and disruption are part of the human condition. Disruption, or what-if moments, as I like to call them, come in unexpected forms for everyone. How do you prepare yourself for what-if moments? Are you prepared? Are your staff or your clients prepared? And if you can reframe your situation and your circumstances, then you have the power to reauthor and to rescript your life, reinventing yourself in the process. Some of the biggest, most defining moments of our lives come with little fanfare or warning. Change happens by chance, by choice, or by crisis. Sometimes we are sent life tremors, warnings, and sometimes we are sent life quakes. And these life quakes have the potential to bury us as a victim or to break us open and plant us like a seed. And the thing is, with a disruptive moment or a what-if moment, and by the way, we go through at least 60 different transitions in one lifetime, is that we never ever go back to normal. And so we are called to let go of the past. And we have to actually step into a new way of being. And that's why I speak about reframing disruption, so that you can rescript and reauthor your life. So nothing will ever be the same again after a what-if moment. And let's just think about what a what-if moment might consist of. Perhaps you have lost your job. Perhaps you have chosen a new job by choice. Perhaps you have chosen to move to a new town or a new country or even a new suburb with a new home. Maybe, and this is the key thing about change and disruption, it's change by choice for all the right reasons, or it is change by crisis, which is externally imposed on you. So some of those changes by choice for all the right reasons can even include choosing to get married, to step into a permanent relationship. Or what about this one? Choosing to start a family. And parenting is probably the single most disruptive thing you will ever do, and from which you will never, ever recover, for all the right reasons, of course. So let's look at an analogy for change and disruption. I want you to think about the wind and the tide. We don't control the wind and the tide, but we can learn to harness its power. And that's exactly how we need to see change and disruption. We need to learn how to harness the power of possibility and opportunity that comes when disruption rears its head by choice, by chance, or by calamity. And what it does do is it forces us to let go of control of our carefully crafted and planned reality. And suddenly we discover that we are not as in control as we thought we were. In fact, control is simply an illusion. The only control that we do have is of our choices in every single moment. And those choices, of course, inform what happens next. So when we go through change and disruption, we are invited to stretch and exercise our resilience muscle. And I want you to think back over your lifetime, whether you are 30 years old and watching this keynote, or whether you are 50 or 60 years old and you've lived half a lifetime. I want you to think back at what those what-if moments might have been for you. And they will be different for absolutely everyone. The one thing that I can assure you is that no matter how good the disruption is or how negative the disruption is, there is a doorway. It's a catalyst for growth if you can see the opportunities and the possibilities. And you see, we go back to what I was saying earlier. A what-if moment has the potential to bury you as a victim or to break you open and plant you like a seed. And through my own experience with trauma, grief, and loss, I can tell you that this is a personal choice. You choose whether you are going to be buried or whether you are going to be broken open. And so when I tell you to go and look back in your life to see what other what-if moments you have been through, how did you bounce back? What was your resilience like? What did you learn? Because you can bring those lessons to bear in the current disruptive moment. So when I look back at my life, I can think of a couple of things that were quite disruptive, but two really profound ones that come to mind. And the one was in my 30s, when my lower back collapsed pretty much, and I really needed a spinal fusion, but was way too young to have one. And I had to dig deep and find a way to pull myself out of it and to, in a way, heal myself and move forwards. And then in my 50th year, I became a widow through really tragic circumstances, which I'm not going to go into now. But we do need to empower ourselves by keeping perspective, by stepping back from the trauma and the loss from time to time to see that there is both collateral damage in any situation and collateral beauty. And we have to keep that perspective in order to empower ourselves. We need to commit to self-reflection, which means doing the inner work. We need to take responsibility for our choices as well as our role in the disruption. We need to embrace change rather than fighting against it. And once again, a reminder to look for the collateral beauty in the collateral damage. Anais Nin said that life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage. Nikki Bush says, life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage and curiosity. May your curiosity always be way stronger than your fear. The hybrid experiment is full of options, looseness, and ambiguity. Do your ExCo members, team leaders, and line managers need to sharpen up their hybrid leadership skills? Whether you are behind the webcam or in the office, authentically showing up and managing your emotions and those of others is part of being a connected, high-touch leader. They've been using my 5-minute hybrid leadership nudge series. It's a punchy, practical series produced by my team in video, audio, and written format. We can customize and brand this content specifically for your organization. While it's natural for you to want to over-control what feels out of control, don't become the boss that becomes the bottleneck because you resort to micromanaging everyone. This Leadership Nudge series will support your leaders on a growth journey as they shift to managing and leading in a hybrid world. Connect with me at info@nikkibush.com to discuss how I can help you.
You're watching HybriCON. Hello, I'm Ursula Buerta, and I have the honor to speak to Nikki Bush on disruption and change. Nikki, you really walk your talk. And I know when you speak about disruption and what-if moments, you've been there. What advice do you have for a process to deal with change?
Ursula, that's a really, really good question, because it doesn't matter what kind of change you're going through, whether it is positive change by choice or negative change by crisis or calamity. Actually, all of those take you through a process of loss and grief, because we have to let go of the picture we had and we have to go and build a new picture. And I always like to say that a what-if moment, disruption, is usually prefaced by an event, but it's actually a process. And if you think of a marriage, which would be disruption by choice, a marriage, the wedding is the event, but the actual marriage is a process that takes place over time. And in any kind of adjustment to change, whether it's traumatic or not, it could be your child starting a new school, could be you starting a new job, you moving country, it could be the loss of a loved one. We go through the very same 7 stages.
7 stages.
7. And they're not always linear.
Okay.
So you can go backwards and forwards, in and out. And we start off with immobilization. And the interesting thing with immobilization, if you think back to COVID, and we were told we were going to be locked down, did you not go, I beg your pardon? And that's immobilization, when you freeze. And then we go into minimization, because we have to minimize the threat and give it some perspective. Otherwise, we feel we might not cope.
Okay, so you make the threat smaller.
Exactly. So in tight lockdown, when we couldn't walk outside of our properties, I was walking backwards and forwards in my little backyard, 20 paces up and down, going, if Nelson Mandela could get out of 27 years of incarceration and do what he did, then surely I can make a plan. Can you see how I did that? Okay. And then we flip into depression, which is when we're feeling out of our comfort zone, we've never been here before, and we feel incompetent and unconfident. And it's a withdrawal cycle. And then we hop out of that and we move into acceptance of where we found ourselves, which is very important, because now we realize there's only one way forward, and it's forward. No looking backwards. Then we start testing this new reality.
Okay, so it's like an experiment.
It's like an experiment, exactly. Yeah, I love that. So if you think about a child starting in a new school who doesn't know anybody and has to make new friends, it's all an experiment.
Oh, that is.
And they might try and make friends and not succeed, and then the brain's a really clever organ, so it will come up with a new strategy, which they will try, and then they might succeed, and then they will do it over and over again. And then from testing our new reality, we move to searching for meaning, which is part of the human condition. We search for meaning in this thing that's happened, whether we chose for it to happen or not. And finally, we start internalizing this new reality. And so if it's, say, been a really traumatic situation, like, for example, with the loss of my husband through a home invasion, and he was murdered, a really traumatic moment, I'm now 5 years on and I've done a lot of work. And now I can stand here and say, life is good. I am leading a rich and full life again. And with any kind of disruption and adjustment, you can get to that place as long as you don't freeze right at the beginning of the process and curl up in a ball and choose to be buried by circumstances.
That was so great. And I think something that in that curve, like you said, you're going to go in and out. And I think that stuckness, the freeze in the first, can really hold you back. And the search for meaning can move you forward. But how did you deal with that search for meaning in your personal story? I know you said previously you didn't want to touch on that, but I think it's so profound.
Well, I think for me, when I think about what's the source of my resilience, it's that I am more curious than fearful. And it doesn't mean I don't have times where I am abjectly fearful. I am, but I always look at those barometers. Where's my fear and where's my curiosity? And if your curiosity is greater than your fear, you want to see what's around the corner, over the hill, about, what are the possibilities, what are the opportunities, because you're curious about what you don't know. So we don't know what we don't know. And who knows, sometimes the worst things that happen to us open doors to some really incredible possibilities and opportunities if we're prepared to take the risk and experiment and look.
I just had so many aha moments. It was so great, because fear really cripples you. It keeps you in that stuck. And I always think it's the opposite of confidence. But you've just given me a bridge. Curiosity.
It's a journey. That's the other thing. It's a journey of adventure into reinventing who you are in these new circumstances, because you've never been here before. So in my situation, it was, who is Nikki without Simon, with whom I'd been for 28 years. So, you also get to look at yourself through a different set of lenses when your journey changes. And that can be a good thing and a bad thing. It can be an exciting thing, exhilarating thing, and a terrifying thing at the same time. You see, the human condition is about duality. And we have to hold the duality and the ambiguity. So yes, fear exists with curiosity. It's not one or the other, it's both. It's just, where are the scales sitting right now?
Because we need dark in order to have light. I look at you and I think you are such an example to me for how you can re-script yourself. And I know people who are watching can go, the world has changed, work has changed, and we're all living in this what if new reality. So thank you for all these tools. We're going to go to a break, and then after the break we're going to speak to Nikki more about how we can implement these tools. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
You're watching HybriCON. I'm Ursula Buerta, and I'm here speaking to Nikki Bush on Dancing with Disruption. Dancing with Disruption is actually an offer that you have. Where can we get hold of?
Absolutely. So there is a free download on nikkibush.com. And if you'd like to, if our viewers would like to go and check out those 7 stages of disruption we were talking about before the break, you can go to my shop, and it's a free download, and go and get hold of it, because it'll give you the high level of what we've just been speaking about. But of course, there's a whole book about this too,
if you want to go to the next high level.
So this is Future Proof Yourself. It was
Beautiful.
published by Penguin Random House in 2021, and it was written for such a time as this. And it's all about dancing with disruption. And really the key theme that runs through the book is self-leadership, because self-leadership and choice are linked. And if you're going to lead yourself through the disruption that the world is in and experiencing right now, and any future disruptions, because COVID was really just the opening act. There's going to be a lot more going down, from artificial intelligence to other pandemics to changes in the workplace. All sorts of things are going to change. We need to learn to be nimble and flexible and adaptable with disruption. So future-proofing yourself has some of the answers, some of the suggestions, and of course we can't be 100% future-proofed, but we can definitely develop the traits to future-proof ourselves and empower ourselves to cope with dealing with what we don't know, because really that's what change is about. We can't anticipate a lot of the change that is coming, but is that resilience muscle going to be strong enough to help us, to empower us through the next change that comes?
I so agree with what you're saying there, because you've got to get comfortable with this unknown world.
With not knowing.
Yes.
Get comfortable with not knowing what the future holds.
And this is what the muscle is going to build. Who did you write this for? When you sat down and you wrote it, who did you have in mind?
Anybody who's going through change and disruption. And that could be somebody in their early career who has found that their degree is not going to get them where they want to go, and then they're going to have to either take a sideways move or a curve in the road. Maybe it's somebody who has lost somebody, lost a job, lost their health, their wealth, or somebody who's just making big life decisions like, who do I marry? Shall I have children? When shall I have children? Absolutely any kind of life change. This is going to help you to prepare yourself to get your mind in the right space to deal with the unknown.
I ticked a few of those boxes that you were speaking
We all
about.
do. You see, it's written for everybody. That's what I'm saying.
Because we're going through this re-scripting. Do you have any other tips for how can we re-script our what-ifs and our disruptions that we're going through?
Well, I think that it's so easy when things go wrong or are stressful or disruptive to point a finger out there and say, this is not my fault, and to name, blame, and shame whomever or whatever on the situation and circumstances. And when we do that, we actually disempower ourselves. And we have to remember when one finger is pointing out, three fingers are pointing back. And so we hold the keys to our own self-empowerment, to our own self-leadership. And we have to stop looking out there for validation and start looking in here, because the reality is nobody's coming to rescue you.
Be the hero of your own story.
Absolutely, 100%.
You speak about self-leadership, and I know that you work with teams. So please can you tell us more about the work that you do, who you work with, and how people can work with you?
Oh, absolutely. Love that question. Well, clearly I love to work with people. So I work with leaders, senior leaders. I work with their teams. I help leaders position themselves within their own team, which is sometimes something that they really battle with. So I help them with their leadership style and to really find the essence of who they are in their current position. And then I help squeeze happy juice into teams, which is where we reset, reignite, reconnect. And because of the global pandemic, people have put themselves in towers to protect themselves, because you know what? Human beings are dangerous. That's how we've been programmed for 2.5 years. And I help teams to break down those towers and reconnect with each other in a really authentic, genuine way. And then I use the Success Cube methodology for helping with the strategy piece, which is fantastic because the entire team gets to script the success recipe for a success journey. So what does good look like for this team? And it'll look different for every single team. And we use this three-dimensional, tangible tool to help the team to do that. So the buy-in is huge because everybody participates. And I use a lot of play-based process work in my teamwork, which really does help people to break down the walls between them, to reconnect, to learn to trust. And there's always a lot of laughter while we're doing some poignant learning and lots of feedback in the room. So everybody has a voice, which is really important. Even the quiet ones discover that they have a voice. And then, of course, there's women's empowerment that I do a lot of.
So passionate.
And then the last thing I want to touch on is the fact that parenting and leadership are very closely aligned. Incredibly closely aligned, and if anything showed us this, it was the pandemic. And so I have a long history of walking the parenting journey and teaching about parenting, and most corporates always want a bolt-on of a parenting piece, because especially with COVID now, we've discovered we are one integrated person. We are not a different person at home to the person we are at home. We actually need to bring our whole selves to the table. That is authenticity. So that's part of the work.
That is so beautiful and powerful. I love how the teams get together to script it, and also that you don't need to take yourself so serious to be serious with your work.
Absolutely. Your authentic voice doesn't have to come through being totally parrot and politically correct in the kind of, the nitty-gritties of, I need to sit like this at the boardroom table and I mustn't say this and I mustn't say that. I think we get so constrained by how we think we should show up instead of bringing our whole selves to the table, because the world of work actually celebrates difference, not sameness today. And we need to stand out, step up, step out, and be prepared to be fully ourselves and to own ourselves and our space in order to make an impact, because the people who make an impact are the people who stay for the longest or will be paid for or bought repeatedly by a client.
Yes.
We need to have impact, and that starts with being a brand of one.
Oh, thank you, Nikki. You are very powerful. where can people connect with you to get more of Nikki Bush and their work?
Well, I think go to my world, which is
Yes.
nikkibush.com.
NikkiBush.com.
And there you're going to find all my books, you're going to find information about all my talks and my services, and you'll find all my social media handles there as well.
Thank you, Nikki. It has been an honor to speak with you, and keep doing the amazing work that you're doing. We need it in the world right now.
Thank you, Ursula.
So future-proof yourself and get yourself a copy of this book.